Well, hello, everybody. My name is Chris Barton.
And I'm Jennifer Ziegler.
And
this is Ernie.
This is Ernie. Two of the three of us write books for young people, and we love talking with friends of ours who also write books for young people about the dedications in their books. That's what this one's dedicated to is all about. And today we are talking with Kalia Yang. Good morning, Kalia.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
And the book we're talking with you about today is The Most Beautiful Thing, illustrated by Khoa. And we were wondering if we could start with you reading the dedication out loud for us.
I would be delighted. For the everlasting beauty of a grandmother's smile, for Jolie, the grandma in this book, and Khoa, the grandma I never got to meet, but whose love shines through my mother. And then Khoa's dedication, for grandma who forgot everything, but will never be forgotten.
If you could talk a bit about why it is dedicated to the dedicatees that you have.
So I only grew up with one grandparent. Both of my grandfathers died when my parents were young. And so my mom, she left her mother at the age of 16 because I'm Hmong American. And there was a horrible war, a secret war in Laos, where 2/3 of us were decimated. My mom met my dad in the jungles of Laos, and they went for a walk that led to marriage, as she would say. And in that leaving, she didn't know it at the time, but it would be forever. There was a huge contingent of soldiers entering into the jungle, hunting out the Hmong. And so she walked with my dad and her mother. They were divided. And then my mom, of course, fled to the refugee camps of Thailand, and then eventually to America. And so there's this grandma who I've never met. Everybody says that I have her jawbone. So I carry a piece of her with me. But I had this one grandma in my life, my dad's mom. And through her, I was able to, in some ways, connect with the grandma I never met as well. And so in writing this book and thinking about grandmothers, thinking about the past peeking into the present and how the present might one day meet the future, I wanted to remember and honor them both.
That's beautiful. Do you think that you write with such wisdom and such love, and I was curious, do you think you could have written this book 10 years or so earlier, or maybe even 20, when you were closer to the age of the protagonist in your book? How would that have been different?
Oh, that is such a wonderful question, Jennifer. When I read my journals, I know exactly the answer. It would have been a fundamentally different book. You know, everything we do is but a picture of us in time. You know, and so this gets me right here, right now, as a mother to children who are beginning to ask about their ancestors. You know, as a parent and as a human being, as a woman, I'm at a much different space. I think I can write this book again in 10 years, 20 years, and it would be a phenomenally different book. And yet in my heart, it would be the same book.
At what point in writing The Most Beautiful Thing did you know that you would dedicate it to your grandmothers?
From the very beginnings. And I knew it would be both of them. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes I'll look at pictures. I have 2 photos of them right together, and I'd stare. So it's at the end of our stairway, and I would stand up on the steps so I could look them in the eyes, and I just knew that it would be for both of them, and that although it would be the grandma I knew, then in 1,000 different ways I was also speaking to the grandma I've never known.
Is it meaningful to your parents that you dedicated this book to both of their mothers? How did you let your parents know you had done this?
So I told my mom and dad that there's this book that I'm gonna write, and it's gonna be about grandmas and about me, and particularly about all the things that we didn't have, but all of the things that money cannot buy. You know, because my parents are grandparents, and there are moments when they feel, you know, that they wish they could buy something for my children that they can't, or my sisters. And I see the sadness. And so in many ways, from the very first, I was also speaking to my mom and dad, reminding, I hope, my father very gently that those tractor rides, those things are the best, and that my children, for the rest of their lives, when they think about him, will connect him to that green tractor, you know, or my mom in the garden with her gardening hoe, digging the hole so the kids can put in the potatoes. I mean, these things are beautiful, and these things are the foundations of memories in ways that things cannot be. And so I was speaking, very much to my parents as well, and reminding them very gently, of a truth that has governed all of our lives. But my dad, the first time he saw Khoa's illustrations, he just sat down and he couldn't talk for a while, and then tears just started falling out of his eyes. And my mom, I was so surprised, when she got to the part, this spread, and I'll just share it. It's a very tiny spread. The spread of the girl looking for coins underneath the sofas. My mom just, she just opened it. She just went flip a page. And I said, Mom, there's more. And she just said, because this is still the way I see you. Because this is still the way I see you. And so it was incredibly moving in many, many ways. Anticipated, hoped for, and then I couldn't have imagined.
Yeah. I think when we dedicate books, and we've spoken to people who dedicate books to all sorts of people, but I think sometimes there's a bit of a difference when we dedicate it to someone who is no longer living versus someone who is alive. So I think you've touched on this, but could you talk a little bit about, in doing so, do you feel the dedication is for them, for you, for family who are still around? If you could just talk a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
My grandma, my dad's mom, the one in this book, she never went to school, so she didn't know how to read or write. Every form she's ever filled, she signed her name with a shaky X that stood in for Jolie. And I'd always thought, even when I was a little girl, that one day I would write her name, and I would write it everywhere, for all of those signatures that never could have happened. And so in many ways, it's my way of honoring her fear that she would be forgotten. But of course, also my parents. And then I imagine myself one day I'll be an ancestor. And it's also my descendants that I'm speaking to. I don't want them to have to search too hard to find these pieces that will never be anywhere else. But I think more than anything, more than all of these things, I want to see their names in print. There's just this hunger to see and find pieces of them in the world. Every time I lose a strand of hair, I imagine that my DNA, I'm gifting the birds and the bees and something, the whole of the world of a piece of me. That is what these things are to me. I'm giving the whole of the world a piece of Grandma. I imagine that one day I'll be a grandma, and when I talk about my grandma then, my grandmas, I think it'll be very different. I hope much wiser, but we shall see.
Let's hope so. Let's hope we all get wiser as we go along.